She was just a barista covering a shift, until a stranger in diamonds whispered 4 words that would drag her into a world of assassins, deception, and a man too dangerous to love. Pretend you're engaged to my son. Naomi Carter stood behind the polished marble counter of the Grand Aurelia Hotel's lobby bar, adjusting her black apron for the 3rd time that evening. The space around her glittered with wealth. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across politicians in tailored suits and executives in silk gowns. Champagne flutes clinked. Laughter echoed off vaulted ceilings. Every gesture felt choreographed, every smile calculated. She didn't belong here. She was supposed to be closing up at the cafe downtown, but when the hotel manager had called desperate for coverage, the overtime pay was impossible to refuse. Still, as she wiped down the espresso machine, she felt painfully exposed, a coffee shop girl playing dress-up in a world of power brokers and old money. That's when she felt it. Eyes on her. Sharp. Assessing. Naomi glanced up and her breath caught. Across the lobby stood a woman in an elegant black gown, silver hair swept into a flawless chignon. She was stunning in that effortless way that spoke of generational wealth and iron discipline. But it was her eyes that made Naomi's pulse quicken. Dark, calculating, and locked onto her with laser focus. The woman didn't smile. She studied. Before Naomi could look away, the woman moved. Not hurried, but deliberate, cutting through the crowd like royalty parting the sea, guests instinctively stepping aside. She stopped directly in front of the bar, Naomi's hands stilled on the espresso portafilter. Up close, the woman was even more intimidating. Her presence filled the space like atmospheric pressure before a storm. "What is your name, child?" The woman's voice was soft, refined, with an accent that wrapped around each word like silk over steel. Naomi swallowed. Naomi, ma'am." The woman's gaze swept over her face, reading her the way someone might read a balance sheet, cataloging assets and liabilities in seconds. Then she leaned forward, bringing with her the scent of expensive perfume and something else. Urgency. "I need you to do something for me," she whispered, her voice barely audible beneath the ambient noise of the lobby. "Something very dangerous." Naomi's heart kicked against her ribs. I don't understand." "Pretend you are engaged to my son." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Naomi blinked, certain she'd misheard. "I beg your pardon?" The woman's fingers closed around Naomi's wrist. Not roughly, but firmly enough to communicate this wasn't a request. "My son's name is Kang Jae-min. In 30 seconds, a very dangerous man is going to walk through those doors." Her eyes flicked toward the lobby entrance. "If he believes Jaemin is alone, unattached, vulnerable, my son will not survive the night." "What?" Naomi tried to pull back, but the woman's grip tightened. "There's no time to explain everything. I need you to trust me." The woman's composure cracked just enough for Naomi to see genuine fear beneath. Someone here is planning to assassinate him. They're waiting for the right moment. But a man with a fiancé? A man who appears settled, domesticated? Her eyes bored into Naomi's. "That changes the calculation. That buys us time." Naomi's mind raced. This was insane. She should refuse, walk away, call security. Movement at the lobby entrance drew both their gazes. A man entered, flanked by 2 others in dark suits. He wore white, pristine and cutting against the warm tones of the hotel, and moved with the kind of confidence that demanded attention. Other guests noticed him immediately. Conversations faltered. Smiles became strained. Even from across the room, Naomi could sense something predatory in the way he surveyed the space. That's Don Huang, the woman whispered, her voice tight with controlled panic. He's here for my son. If he thinks Jae-min rejected his daughter's marriage proposal because he's already committed elsewhere. She looked back at Naomi. Will you help us? Please. Every instinct Naomi had screamed to say no, to run. This wasn't her world, wasn't her problem. But the woman's desperation was real. And if Naomi refused, if she walked away and something happened? Naomi's voice came out hoarse. Okay, yes, I'll do it. Relief flooded the woman's features. She straightened, composure snapping back into place like armor. In one smooth motion, she stepped around the bar and linked her arm through Naomi's, guiding her out from behind the counter as if they were old friends. Naomi's legs felt unsteady as they walked toward the center of the lobby. Don Huang had stopped near a cluster of settees, accepting champagne from a waiter, while his eyes continued their cold assessment of the room. Mrs. Kang. He greeted smoothly in accented English, his smile polite and utterly devoid of warmth. What a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect to see you this evening. Don Huang. Jaemin's mother inclined her head graciously. The pleasure is mine. Allow me to introduce someone very special. This is Naomi Carter. She turned to Naomi with a beaming smile that almost looked genuine. My son's fiancée. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Don Huang's expression flickered. Surprise, calculation, then something that might have been anger before smoothing into neutrality. Fiancé? How unexpected. I was under the impression Jae-min was unattached. A recent development, Mrs. Kang replied lightly. We've been keeping it quiet until now. The voice came from behind Naomi, deep and controlled. She turned and found herself face to face with the most striking man she'd ever seen. Kang Jae-min was tall and broad-shouldered in a midnight black suit that looked custom-made. His features were sharp, almost severe. High cheekbones, strong jaw, dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything in a single glance. He moved with the contained grace of someone trained in violence, and when his gaze landed on Naomi, she felt pinned in place. For a heartbeat, confusion flickered across his face. Then his eyes cut to his mother, and Naomi saw understanding dawn, followed immediately by a flash of cold fury that he buried so quickly she almost thought she'd imagined it. Don Huang, Jae-min said evenly, turning his attention to the man in white. I see you've met Naomi. Before Naomi could react, Jae-min stepped close and slid his arm around her waist, pulling her against his side. The contact was startling. His body was solid, radiating heat through the thin fabric of his suit. His hand rested at her hip, possessive and protective in equal measure. Naomi's breath hitched, but she forced herself to stay still to play the part. Congratulations are in order then, Don Huang said, though his smile had sharpened into something dangerous. You've been remarkably discreet about this engagement, Jae-min. One might almost think it's convenient timing. Jae-min's grip on Naomi tightened fractionally. I don't conduct my personal life for an audience, he replied, his tone polite but edged with steel. My relationship with Naomi is exactly that, personal. I'm sure you can appreciate the value of privacy. Of course. Don Huang's eyes moved between them, searching for cracks in the facade. Though I must admit, I'm disappointed. My daughter had hoped. Your daughter is a remarkable woman, Jae-min cut in smoothly. I'm certain she'll find someone far more suitable than me. The temperature in the space between them seemed to drop 10 degrees. Don Huang's smile remained fixed, but his eyes had gone flat and cold. Indeed, Well then, I won't interrupt your evening further. He inclined his head. Enjoy your engagement. He turned and walked away, his guards falling into step behind him. But even as he disappeared into the crowd, Naomi could feel his presence like a blade pressed against her spine. The moment he was out of earshot, Mrs. Kang released a shaky breath. Thank you, she whispered to Naomi. Thank you. But Naomi barely heard her, because Jamin's hand was still at her waist, and when she tilted her head to look up at him, she found his dark eyes locked on her face with an intensity that made her heart stutter. We need to talk, he said quietly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Now. Hello, my friends. Thanks for joining me on this fascinating story. Before we continue, please kindly help subscribe to the channel, like the video and comment where you are watching from and what time it's at your end. Now let's continue with our story. Jamin guided Naomi through a concealed doorway behind a marble pillar, his hand still firm at the small of her back. They climbed a narrow service stairwell, a stark contrast to the gilded opulence below, and emerged into a private suite that overlooked the lobby through one-way glass. Mrs. Kang was already inside, her composed mask finally cracking as she sank into a chair. What the hell was that? Jamin's voice was quiet, but the controlled fury beneath made Naomi flinch. He turned to his mother. You pulled a civilian into this? Into my life? I didn't have a choice, Mrs. Kang shot back. Don Huang arrived early. If he'd seen you alone, I can handle Don Huang. Can you handle a bullet? His mother's voice broke. They're not negotiating anymore, Jamin. The intelligence was clear. Someone in that room is being paid to kill you tonight. The words hung in the air like smoke. Naomi's pulse thundered in her ears. Kill him? She looked between them. What? Who are you people? Jamin's jaw tightened. He moved to the window, staring down at the glittering crowd below. When he spoke, his voice was flat, matter-of-fact. My family controls shipping routes from Seoul to Singapore, legitimate on paper. Less so in practice. He glanced back at her. We move things, high-value things, and some people would prefer we didn't. You're criminals. The word came out as barely a whisper. We're businessmen operating in gray spaces, Mrs. Kang corrected coolly. But yes, Miss Carter, we are not saints. Naomi's hands trembled. I need to leave. I need to. You can't. Jamin turned fully to face her. Don Huang has eyes everywhere. If you disappear now, he'll know it was a performance. And if he knows... His expression darkened. He'll assume I'm vulnerable, which means people die. Starting with me. That's not my problem. It became your problem the moment you agreed to help. His tone wasn't cruel, just resigned. I'm sorry, truly, but you're in this now. Mrs. Kang stood, smoothing her gown. We need you for tonight only. Play the role until the event ends. After that, you'll be compensated generously and will ensure your safety. My safety? Naomi's voice climbed. From what? A knock at the door interrupted them. A woman in hotel management attire entered, carrying a garment bag and a small jewelry case. She didn't look at Naomi, a deliberate avoidance that felt practiced. Your wardrobe, miss, the woman said, her accent faintly Eastern European. And your backstory. She handed Naomi a laminated card filled with bullet points. Met at Columbia University. Engaged 6 months. Planning spring wedding in Seoul. Naomi stared at the card, then at the midnight blue gown being laid across the sofa. This was real. This was actually happening. You have 20 minutes. Mrs. Kang said gently. The main event begins soon. You'll need to be seen together, dancing, mingling, convincing. Jamin hadn't moved from the window. She shouldn't be here, he said quietly. But she is. His mother's tone left no room for argument. The gown fit perfectly, too perfectly, as if they'd known her measurements. The thought made Naomi's skin crawl. She studied herself in the mirror. Hair swept up, diamond earrings, borrowed, she hoped. A woman who looked nothing like the barista who'd clocked in 4 hours ago. When she emerged, Jamin's expression flickered with something she couldn't read. Appreciation? Regret? We need to go, he said simply. They descended a different staircase, this one opening directly into the main ballroom. Music swelled, a string quartet playing something classical and mournful. Guests turned, noting their entrance with thinly veiled curiosity. Naomi felt eyes tracking her movements. Calculating, dissecting. Jamin leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. Stay within arm's reach. Don't accept drinks from anyone but me. And if I tell you to move, you move immediately. Understood? She nodded, her throat too tight for words. They made their way through the crowd. Politicians greeted Jamin with careful respect. Business associates offered congratulations that sounded more like condolences. And through it all, Naomi felt it, the weight of surveillance, of judgments being rendered in real time. A waiter approached with champagne, young, nondescript, the kind of face that disappeared in crowds. But Naomi noticed his hands shaking, noticed the way his eyes darted toward the exit. Noticed, Naomi Carter? The waiter's voice was too loud, cutting through nearby conversations. From the cafe on 15th Street? Her blood turned to ice. Jamin went very still beside her. Naomi started. You made my cappuccino last week? The waiter continued, smiling now, oblivious to the danger. I didn't know you knew the Kangs. Small world, huh? Conversations around them had stopped. Guests were listening now, heads tilted with predatory interest. Jamin's hand found Naomi's, his fingers interlacing with hers. The gesture was tender, possessive, and absolutely deliberate. My fiancé has a kind heart, Jamin said smoothly, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet space. She works at the cafe because she enjoys it, not because she needs to. He pulled Naomi closer, his arm sliding around her waist. Isn't that right, darling? His eyes locked onto hers, and in them she saw a clear message. Play along, or we both die. Naomi's mouth was dry, but she forced a smile. I like staying grounded, she said, praying her voice didn't shake. Even when I'm marrying into... She looked up at Jamin. This. He bent and kissed her forehead, a gesture so natural, so intimate, that for a moment even Naomi almost believed it. The waiter laughed awkwardly and moved on. Conversations resumed. The moment passed. But Naomi had felt it, the razor's edge they were walking. One wrong word, one slip, and the carefully constructed lie would collapse. And she was beginning to understand that when it did, blood would follow. The ballroom had settled into a deceptive calm. Couples swayed on the dance floor beneath cascading light from crystal chandeliers. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne. To anyone watching, it was just another evening of wealth and carefully managed appearances. Naomi knew better now. She stood beside Jamin near the orchestra, hyper-aware of every face that turned their direction, every hand that moved too quickly toward a pocket. Her borrowed heels pinched. The diamond earrings felt like weights dragging her down. You're doing well, Jamin murmured, not looking at her. His eyes continued their methodical scan of the room. Better than I expected. I'm terrified, she admitted. Good. Fear keeps you alert. He turned slightly, his shoulder angling to shield her from a cluster of businessmen to their left. The event ends in 40 minutes. Then this is over. Naomi wanted to believe him. But something felt wrong, a pressure in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. The lights dimmed for a scheduled toast. The hotel manager stepped to a microphone, beginning remarks about the evening's honored guests. Applause rippled through the crowd. That's when Naomi saw him. The same waiter from earlier, the one who'd recognized her. He was moving along the perimeter, not serving drinks, but heading toward the side exit with purpose. His jacket hung awkwardly, weighted on one side. Her breath caught. Jamin. He'd already seen it. His hand found hers, gripping tight. Stay close. He breathed. The waiter stopped 15 feet away. His hand disappeared inside his jacket. Everything happened in fractured seconds. The waiter drew a pistol. Compact, black, professional. Someone screamed. Jamin moved with terrifying speed, his body slamming into Naomi's as he drove them both behind a marble column. Her back hit the wall hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. The first shot cracked through the ballroom like thunder. Glass exploded, a chandelier, or maybe a window. Naomi couldn't tell. Guests were screaming now, diving under tables, scrambling for exits. The music cut off mid-note, replaced by chaos. Jamin's body covered hers completely, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other reaching beneath his jacket. When it emerged, he was holding a gun. Naomi's mind couldn't process it. He came armed to a party. A second shot rang out. Closer. Stay down! Jamin barked. He pivoted around the column, weapon raised, and fired 3 times in rapid succession. The reports were deafening in the enclosed space. Through the gaps between fleeing guests, Naomi saw the waiter stumble, his shoulder blooming red. But he didn't fall. Instead, he turned and bolted toward a service door, weapons still in hand. Security flooded the room. 6 men in dark suits, moving with military precision. They pursued the shooter through the door he'd disappeared into, weapons drawn. Jamin remained frozen for another 3 heartbeats, his body still shielding Naomi's, his breathing controlled despite the adrenaline. Then he pulled back slightly, his eyes scanning her face with an intensity that stole what little breath she had left. Are you hurt? His hands moved over her shoulders, her arms, checking for injuries. No, I don't think. Her voice came out broken, shaking. Shouts echoed from the service corridor. Then a single gunshot, distant, final. Mrs. Kang appeared through the panicking crowd, her gown torn, a thin cut across her cheekbone. Is she safe? She's fine. Jamin's jaw was tight. He got away? Out the loading bay. They're tracking him. His mother's eyes found Naomi's. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Naomi couldn't respond. She was staring at the blood pooled on the marble floor where the waiter had stood. At the bullet hole in the column 6 inches from where her head had been. At Jamin's gun, still in his hand, smoke wisping from the barrel. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't a story she could close and walk away from. Someone had just tried to kill them, had almost succeeded. Miss Carter. A security officer appeared, his expression professionally neutral. We need to evacuate you. No. The word surprised even Naomi. She looked up at Jamin, whose expression had gone carefully blank. No? He repeated. If I leave now, Don Huang wins. He'll know it was fake. He'll know you're vulnerable. Her hands were shaking, but her voice grew steadier. You said it yourself. I'm in this now. So I'm staying. Mrs. Kang exchanged a glance with her son. She doesn't understand what she's... I understand someone just shot at us. Naomi pushed herself upright, ignoring her trembling legs. I understand that if I run, it gets worse. For both of us. She met Jaemin's eyes. So what happens next? For the first time since she'd met him, Jaemin looked genuinely surprised. He studied her face as if seeing her for the first time, not as a convenient prop, but as a person making an impossible choice. Next, he said quietly, sliding his weapon back into its holster. We finish what we started. Together. The word hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to examine. But as sirens wailed in the distance and security secured the exits, Naomi realized something that terrified her more than the bullets. She didn't want to run. Not anymore. The Kang estate sat behind iron gates and ancient oak trees, 20 minutes outside the city. It looked like old money, stone facade, manicured gardens, the kind of place that appeared in architectural magazines. But Naomi noticed the cameras hidden in the eaves, the security patrols disguised as groundskeepers, the way every window was bulletproof glass. A gilded cage was still a cage. Your room is on the second floor, Mrs. Kang said as they entered through a side entrance. She looked exhausted now, the adrenaline of the evening finally wearing off. East wing. Jaemin's is west. There's security stationed at every exit. For how long? Naomi asked. Until we identify who sent the shooter. Jaemin appeared from a doorway, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He'd washed the gunpowder residue from his hands, but tension still coiled in his shoulders. Could be days, could be weeks. I have a job, an apartment, a life. You have a target on your back. His tone was flat, final. Don Huang saw you with me. Whether you stay or run, he'll assume you know something. That makes you leverage. The word hit like a slap. Leverage. Not a person. A commodity. Naomi's hands curled into fists. I didn't ask for any of this. I know. For a moment, something like regret flickered across his face. Then it was gone. But here we are. The next morning, Naomi woke to find clothes in her size laid out on the dresser. Jeans, simple shirts, nothing like the gown from last night. Practical. Anonymous. A knock at the door preceded Jaemin's entrance. He didn't wait for permission. Come with me, he said. She followed him through corridors lined with artwork that probably cost more than her annual salary, down a flight of stairs, and into a basement she hadn't known existed. It opened into a training facility, mats, weights, a wall of weapons secured behind glass. You want to stay? Jaemin said, turning to face her. Then you learn to protect yourself. I won't have your death on my conscience. I don't know how to fight. I know. That's why we start now. For the next hour, he taught her basics. How to stand, how to move, how to break someone's grip if they grabbed her wrist. His touch was clinical, professional, adjusting her stance with hands that never lingered. But when he demonstrated a defensive move, pulling her against his chest to show her the proper angle, she felt his heartbeat against her shoulder blade. Steady, strong. You're holding your breath, he murmured near her ear. In a real situation, you'll pass out. Breathe. She did, and became hyper-aware of how close he was, how his hands rested on her hips, guiding her weight distribution, how the space between them felt charged with something neither acknowledged. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly, his hands stilled. Doing what? Training me, keeping me here. You could have paid me off and disappeared. For a long moment, he didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. Because you didn't run. When the shooting started, You had every reason to save yourself. But you stayed. He stepped back, putting distance between them. People don't do that in my world, not without an agenda. Maybe I'm just stupid. Or brave. His eyes met hers. I haven't decided which. That night, unable to sleep, Naomi wandered the estate. She'd memorized the guard rotations, 3 patrols, staggered by 20 minutes. The house itself was quiet, most of the staff gone by 10. She was passing Jaemin's study when she heard voices. Can't trust him anymore. Mrs. Kang's voice, tight with stress. Not after what we found. The deposits came from an overseas account. A male voice Naomi didn't recognize. Routed through 3 shells, but the signature is unmistakable. My brother wouldn't... Mrs. Kang's voice broke. He's family. Family tried to kill your son last night. The words froze Naomi in place. Uncle Minho has gambling debts we didn't know about. The man continued. 2 million, owed to Don Huang's syndicate. The shooter's payment traces back to the same network. Silence. Heavy and damning. Does Jaemin know? Mrs. Kang finally asked. Not yet, but he will by morning. Naomi's hand found the wall, steadying herself. The threat wasn't external. It was blood. It was family. She backed away slowly, her mind racing. Should she tell Jaemin? Would he even believe her? She turned to retreat to her room and collided with a solid chest. Jaemin stood in the darkened hallway, his expression unreadable. He'd been there the whole time. He'd heard. How much did you catch? His voice was barely above a whisper. Enough. Her throat was dry. Your uncle is a dead man. The words were cold, clinical. But when Naomi looked up, she saw something raw in his eyes. Betrayal. Grief. Without thinking, she reached for his hand. He stared at the contact like it was a foreign concept. Then his fingers closed around hers, gripping tight enough to hurt. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. This is what my world looks like. He met her eyes. Still think you're brave enough to stay? She should say no, should demand he release her from this nightmare. Instead, she squeezed his hand back. Ask me tomorrow, she said. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or the first fragile thread of trust. In the darkness of the hallway, with danger circling closer and betrayal seeping through the walls, they stood together. 2 people who shouldn't fit, bound by circumstances neither had chosen. And somehow, that was enough. For now. The confrontation happened at breakfast. Naomi descended the stairs to find the dining room transformed into an interrogation chamber. Jaemin stood at the head of the table, his uncle Minho seated across from him. Mrs. Kang occupied the far end, her face a mask of controlled devastation. 2 security guards flanked the doors. Minho looked older than his 50 years, graying hair, trembling hands wrapped around a coffee cup he hadn't touched. When he saw Naomi hesitate in the doorway, something like pity crossed his face. Miss Carter, he said hoarsely. I'm sorry you have to witness this. Witness what? She looked to Jaemin, whose expression was carved from stone. My uncle has a confession to make. Jaemin's voice was eerily calm. He slid a tablet across the table. Don't you, uncle? Minho closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. I never meant for it to go this far. The debts, they started small. Poker mostly, then horses, then... He swallowed. Don Huang's people approached me 6 months ago. They said if I helped them, the debts would disappear. Help them how? Naomi's voice came out smaller than she intended. Information. Guard rotations. Jaemin's schedule. Minho's gaze found his nephew's. I swear, I thought they just wanted leverage for negotiations. I didn't know they'd send an assassin. You knew. Jamin's words cut like a blade. You've known for weeks, and you said nothing. The room fell silent. Mrs. Kang spoke, her voice fractured. Get him out of my sight. The guards moved forward. Minho didn't resist as they escorted him toward the door. But as he passed Naomi, he stopped. They're not done, he whispered urgently. Don Huang wants leverage. He looked at Naomi with genuine fear. You need to get her out of here, today. Then he was gone. 20 minutes later, Naomi stood on the estate's garden terrace, trying to steady her breathing. The morning air was crisp, birds singing in willful ignorance of the chaos inside. She heard Jamin approach before she saw him. You should eat something, he said quietly. I'm not hungry. Naomi, your uncle tried to have you killed, and apparently I'm next. She turned to face him. What did he mean? They want leverage? Why me specifically? Jamin's jaw tightened. We're looking into it. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Before she could press further, the crack of splintering wood echoed from above. Naomi looked up just as a section of the terrace balustrade gave way, and a massive stone planter plummeted directly toward her. Jamin moved on pure instinct, tackling her sideways. They hit the ground hard, rolling across the grass as the planter exploded where she'd been standing, showering them with soil and shattered ceramic. For a moment, neither moved. Jamin's body covered hers, his chest heaving against her back, arms locked around her like a cage. Don't move, he breathed. Not yet. Security swarmed the terrace, shouting, radio chatter. Someone barked orders about checking the balcony. When Jamin finally pulled back, his eyes were wild. Are you hurt? She shook her head, though her hands were shaking violently. A guard appeared. The mounting was sawed through. Recently. Whoever did it knew exactly where she'd be standing. Jamin's expression went cold. He stood, pulling Naomi up with him, and headed inside without a word. She had to jog to keep pace as he strode through corridors to his mother's private office. Mrs. Kang was already inside, pouring herself a drink despite the early hour. Enough, Jamin said flatly. Tell her, now. His mother's hand stilled. Jamin, she was almost killed. She deserves the truth. Naomi looked between them. What truth? Mrs. Kang set down the glass and turned, studying Naomi's face with an intensity that made her skin crawl. 5 years ago, she began slowly. My son was engaged. Her name was Hannah Lee, American-born, like you. She worked in the arts, modest background, bright future. Mrs. Kang's voice caught. Don Huang saw her as a weakness, leverage. As my brother said, they took her. And before we could negotiate her release, she died. Jamin finished, his voice hollow. Naomi's stomach dropped. What does that have to do with me? Mrs. Kang crossed to a drawer and withdrew a photograph. She handed it to Naomi. The woman in the picture was smiling, standing in a cafe, not identical to Naomi, but eerily similar. Same complexion, same hair texture, same heart-shaped face. Oh my God, Naomi whispered. When I saw you that night, Mrs. Kang said quietly, I thought perhaps we'd been given a second chance. That if Don Huang believed Jamin had moved on, found someone new to care about, he'd see an opportunity, another weakness to exploit. You used me. The words tasted like ash. You put a target on my back because I reminded you of your dead son's fiancé. I saved my son's life, Mrs. Kang said sharply. And I saved yours, too. You were nobody to Don Huang until you became somebody to Jae Min. Except now she's everything to him. Jae Min cut in, his voice dangerously quiet. Which means they won't stop until she's dead, just like Hannah. The room fell silent. Naomi's hands clenched around the photograph. Used. Manipulated. A replacement for a ghost. She should scream. Should demand they release her immediately. Instead, she looked up at Jae Min. I want to learn everything. How to shoot. How to fight. How to survive in your world. Her voice hardened. Because I'm not Hannah. I'm not going to die for your family's sins. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise? Then something darker. Respect. Then we start today, he said. Mrs. Kang looked between them. This is a mistake. The mistake, Naomi interrupted, was thinking I'd stay weak and grateful. She met the older woman's eyes. I'm done being your pawn. If I'm going to have a target on my back, I'm going to make sure I'm the one holding the gun. The transformation didn't happen overnight. For 2 weeks, Naomi trained until her muscles screamed. Jae Min was relentless, teaching her to shoot, to read body language, to memorize exit routes in under 30 seconds. His lead security officer, a former intelligence operative named Chen, taught her surveillance detection and counter-surveillance techniques. You're thinking like prey, Chen said during one session, watching her navigate a scenario. Prey runs, predators hunt. Which are you? Naomi met his eyes. I'm learning to be both. Chen smiled for the first time. Good answer. But it was the quieter lessons that changed her most. Mrs. Kang, whether from guilt or necessity, began teaching her the language of their world. How to read power dynamics in a room. Which silences meant danger. How to disappear in plain sight. Strength isn't always loud, Mrs. Kang said one evening, watching Naomi practice walking with the fluid confidence of someone born to wealth. Sometimes it's invisible until the moment you strike. Naomi studied her reflection. The woman staring back looked nothing like the barista who'd stumbled into this nightmare. Her posture was different, her gaze sharper. She was becoming someone else, someone dangerous. And it terrified her how much she liked it. Jae Min found her on the range late one night, putting rounds through targets with increasing accuracy. He leaned against the doorframe, watching in silence until she emptied the magazine. You're pulling left, he observed. I know, I'm working on it. She reloaded with practiced efficiency, muscle memory now, not fumbling uncertainty. He approached slowly. Chen says you're progressing faster than anyone he's trained. Chen says a lot of things. She raised the weapon, sighted, fired, center mass. Most of them aren't compliments. That was a compliment, from him. Jae Min stopped beside her. Naomi, don't. She lowered the gun. Don't tell me I should stop, that this isn't my world, that I should go back to making cappuccinos and pretending none of this happened. I was going to say you're incredible. The words hung between them. She turned, finding him closer than she'd expected, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried alone. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Any of it. I can still get you out. New identity, new city. You'd be safe. Safe and alone, looking over my shoulder forever. She shook her head. That's not living. That's just slow dying. His jaw tightened. You could die here, quickly. At least I'd die as myself, not as some ghost running from your past. Something cracked in his expression. Before she could process it, his hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You were never her, he whispered. From the first moment, You were only yourself. Her breath caught. Jamin, I tried not to see you, tried to keep this clinical, transactional. His forehead lowered to hers. But you made that impossible. The space between them felt electric, dangerous. One of them needed to step back. Neither did. This is a terrible idea, Naomi breathed. The worst, he agreed. His lips brushed hers, tentative, questioning. She answered by rising on her toes, closing the distance, pouring weeks of fear and fury and impossible want into the kiss. He responded with controlled intensity, one hand tangling in her hair, the other pulling her flesh against him. Nothing tentative now. Just need and the kind of chemistry that could burn everything down. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back. We can't, Jamin said roughly, though he hadn't released her. You deserve someone without blood on their hands. I deserve to make my own choices? She held his gaze. And I choose this. I choose you, even knowing what it costs. His thumb traced her lower lip. It might cost everything. Then we'd better make it worth it. The next morning, Naomi was reviewing security footage with Chen when something caught her eye. A delivery van, visible in the background of 3 separate incidents over 2 weeks. Always the same license plate, always in proximity to the estate. Chen, look at this. He leaned closer, his expression darkening. That van has no legitimate reason to be in this neighborhood repeatedly. They pulled up traffic camera footage, tracking the vehicle's pattern. It always parked 3 blocks away, never closer. Always during shift changes. They're surveilling us, Naomi said, or planning an insertion route. Chen's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up tomorrow's schedule. The charity gala Mrs. Kang is hosting at the estate. 200 guests, catering staff, temporary security. The perfect chaos for an attack. Naomi's pulse quickened. Chen reached for his radio, but Naomi stopped him. Wait, if we tip them off now, they'll just reschedule. We'll never see it coming. What are you suggesting? She met his eyes. We let it happen, but on our terms. That evening, Naomi presented her findings to Jamin in his study. He listened in silence, his expression growing darker with each detail. You want to use the gala as a trap, he said finally. I want to end this, permanently. She laid out the surveillance van's route on a map. They'll infiltrate during setup, probably as catering staff or maintenance. If we identify them before they strike, it's too dangerous. It's the only way to draw them out completely. Don Huang won't stop until he knows his operation is compromised. She leaned forward. But we control the environment. We know they're coming. That's the advantage. Jamin was quiet for a long moment. Then, you'd need to be there, visible, as bait. I know. They'll target you specifically. I'm counting on it. His hands clenched into fists. Naomi, you taught me to stop being prey, she interrupted. So let me hunt. He stared at her, and she saw the war in his eyes, between the man who wanted to lock her away safely and the one who recognized she was no longer someone who could be caged. Finally, he nodded. We do this together, every step. She reached across the desk, taking his hand. Together. His fingers tightened around hers, and in that grip was a promise, one that might cost them everything, but was worth the risk, because some things were worth fighting for, and some people were worth dying beside. The gala preparations began at dawn. Florists, caterers, technicians, a carefully orchestrated invasion of the Kang estate. Chen's team had vetted everyone, but Naomi knew professionals would pass surface-level screening. She watched from the second-floor window as the surveillance van appeared right on schedule, parking 3 blocks east. 2 men emerged wearing catering uniforms, carrying equipment cases that looked standard but sat too heavy in their hands. "Eyes on 2 suspects," she murmured into her concealed radio. "Entering through service gate now." Jamin's voice crackled back. "Don't engage. We track them until we identify the whole cell." "Copy." But something felt wrong. The men moved with military precision, but their eyes kept darting to the West Wing, away from the ballroom where the gala would be held. Away from the crowd, toward Jamin's private quarters. Naomi's blood ran cold. "They're not here for the gala. It's a diversion." "What?" "They're going after you directly. Now." She was already moving, slipping down the servants' staircase. Behind her, she heard Jamin barking orders. Security mobilizing, but they'd be too late if the assassins reached his quarters first. The 2 men had disappeared into the service corridors. Naomi followed, her hand finding the compact Glock holstered at her spine, a gift from Chen, who'd finally deemed her ready. Predator or prey? His voice echoed in her mind. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with a maid, except the woman's eyes were too alert, her posture too balanced. A third operative. The woman's hand moved toward her apron. Naomi moved faster, grabbing the woman's wrist and driving her elbow into her solar plexus. The operative gasped, doubling over. Naomi swept her leg, sending her crashing into a linen cart. "Hostile neutralized, East Service Hall." She breathed into her radio. No response, just static. They were jamming communications. Naomi grabbed the woman's radio, switching frequencies until she caught fragments of conversation. "Second floor secured. Charges set in 3 minutes. Extract after detonation." Charges. They weren't here to shoot Jamin. They were going to blow up the entire wing. Naomi ran. She burst through a service door into the main corridor just as the 2 men reached Jamin's study. One was placing something against the door. Compact, clay-like. C4. "Stop!" She raised her weapon, voice steady despite her hammering heart. Both men turned. One smiled. "The barista," he said in accented English. "Don Huang sends his regards." He pressed a detonator. The explosion wasn't from the study. It was behind her. The service corridor erupted in flame and debris, cutting off her escape route. The concussive force threw Naomi forward. She hit the marble floor hard, ears ringing. Through blurred vision, she saw the men entering the study. Saw Jamin inside, reaching for his weapon. She fired. 3 shots, center mass on the first operative. He went down. The second dove behind a column, returning fire. Bullets sparked off marble inches from her head. Then Jamin was there, moving with lethal grace, his weapon tracking the second operative. 2 shots. The man collapsed. "Naomi!" Jamin pulled her behind cover as a third explosion rocked the building, the West Wing stairwell collapsing in a cascade of dust and flame. "There's more," she gasped. "At least 3 others." Gunfire erupted from the main hall. Chen's voice cut through the chaos on a backup frequency. "Multiple hostiles, ground floor. They're trying to breach the vault." The vault. Where Mrs. Kang kept the family's most sensitive records, ledgers, account numbers, blackmail material accumulated over decades. This wasn't assassination. It was a heist disguised as murder. Jamin's eyes met hers. "Can you move?" She nodded, pushing past the pain in her ribs. They moved through smoke-filled corridors, weapons raised, working in tandem like they'd done this for years instead of weeks. When they reached the main hall, chaos reigned. Security engaged with 4 operatives, guests screaming, fires spreading. Chen was pinned down behind an overturned table, blood streaming from a shoulder wound. "They've got the vault open!" he shouted. "Two inside!" Jamin didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the vault entrance with Naomi covering his six. They descended the reinforced stairwell, the air growing colder, the sounds of battle muffled above. The vault door stood open. Inside, two figures rifled through file cabinets with practiced efficiency. One of them turned. Naomi's breath stopped. Mrs. Kang's personal secretary, Minseo, the woman who'd brought Naomi tea every morning, who'd helped her practice Korean phrases. "I'm sorry," Minseo said, raising her weapon. "It's not personal." "It never is," Jamin replied coldly. The standoff lasted a heartbeat. Then Minseo's partner made a move. Multiple things happened at once. Minseo fired at Jamin. Naomi threw herself sideways, her shot going wild. Jamin's bullet took the partner in the chest, and Chen appeared in the doorway, weapon raised, firing twice. Minseo crumpled, but not before her second shot found its mark. Chen staggered, his hand going to his abdomen where blood bloomed dark and wet. He looked down, almost curious, then his knees buckled. "No!" Naomi caught him as he fell, her hands pressing uselessly against the wound. "Chen, stay with me." His eyes found hers, already dimming. "Told you," he rasped. "Predator, not prey." Then he was gone. Naomi knelt in a spreading pool of blood, holding the man who'd transformed her from victim to survivor, while around them the estate burned and sirens wailed in the distance. Jamin's hand settled on her shoulder, gentle but firm. "We have to go. Now." She looked up at him, tears cutting tracks through the soot on her face. "He saved us." "I know." His voice was raw. "And we're going to make sure it meant something." Emergency lights flickered. Above them, the battle had gone quiet. Either won or lost, Naomi couldn't tell. But as Jamin pulled her to her feet and they emerged from the vault into a scene of devastation, one thing became crystal clear. This wasn't a game anymore. The price of survival was measured in blood and sacrifice, and the war had only just begun. The compound sat on the industrial outskirts of the city, a shipping warehouse that hadn't seen legitimate cargo in years. Don Huang's final stronghold, according to the documents recovered from the vault. Naomi checked her weapon for the third time as the SUV rolled to a stop 2 blocks away. Beside her, Jamin stared at the building with the focused intensity of a man preparing for war. "Last chance to stay behind," he said quietly. She looked at him. "You know I won't." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. They'd lost that argument days ago in the smoke and ash of Chen's death. She wasn't a civilian anymore, wasn't someone who could be protected from the darkness. She'd walked into it willingly, and she'd walk beside him until the end. The assault team moved in coordinated silence, 12 operatives loyal to the Kang family, trained for exactly this kind of operation. They breached through 3 entry points simultaneously, flashbangs preceding their entry. Naomi and Jamin went through the main entrance. The warehouse floor was vast and shadowed, containers stacked like a metal maze. Gunfire erupted immediately. Huang's guards had been expecting them. The assault team engaged, driving deeper into the structure with clinical precision. "Second floor!" Jamin shouted over the chaos. "He'll be in the office overlooking the operation." They climbed external stairs as bullets sparked off metal railings. A guard appeared at the landing. Naomi put 2 rounds in his chest without hesitation. The man who'd taught her that was dead, but his lessons lived on. The office door was reinforced steel. Jamin planted a breaching charge, and they took cover. The explosion blew the door inward with a deafening crack. Don Huang sat behind a mahogany desk that looked absurdly civilized amid the industrial decay. He wasn't alone. Mrs. Kang stood beside him, her hands bound, a thin cut across her cheek. And holding a gun to her head was Uncle Minho. "Hello, nephew," Minho said, his voice steadier than when they'd last seen him. "I was hoping you'd come personally." Jamin's weapon never wavered, trained on his uncle's center mass. "Let her go. This is between us." "Is it?" Minho's smile was bitter. "You think I'm the villain here? Your mother has spent 30 years building an empire on blood and extortion. I was just the accountant who kept the books." "You betrayed your family for gambling debts," Jamin said coldly. "I betrayed criminals who hide behind the word family." Minho's composure cracked. "Do you know how many lives your mother has destroyed? How many people have disappeared because they inconvenienced the Kang business interests?" Mrs. Kang's eyes found her son's. "Don't listen to him." "Shut up," Don Huang said pleasantly, his own weapon now trained on Jamin. "I've been very patient, but let's resolve this, shall we?" He gestured to Naomi. "The girl. She's the reason we're all here, really." Naomi's blood ran cold. "What? You thought you were just convenient? A random barista who happened to look like the dead fiancé?" Huang laughed. "My dear, you were chosen, vetted, placed at that hotel specifically because we knew Mrs. Kang couldn't resist the resemblance." The words hit like physical blows. "You're lying," Jamin said, but uncertainty flickered in his voice. "Am I?" Huang pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the desk. 6 months of surveillance, financial background checks, psychological profiles. We made sure she was perfect, vulnerable enough to manipulate, strong enough to be believable. Naomi stared at the screen. Photos of her apartment, her cafe, her morning routine documented with clinical precision. "Everything," Huang continued, "was designed to make you care about her. Because the best way to destroy the heir to a criminal empire isn't to kill him, it's to give him something to lose, then take it away slowly." "You used me," Naomi whispered, but she wasn't looking at Huang. She was looking at Mrs. Kang, whose expression had gone carefully neutral. "I saved you," Mrs. Kang said quietly. "They would have killed you regardless. I gave you a chance." "You gave her a role in your game!" Jamin's voice cracked with fury. "Chen died protecting a lie. How many others?" "Everyone in this room is covered in blood," Minho said. "The only question is whose sin weighs heaviest." For a long moment, no one moved. The standoff hung by a thread. Then Naomi lowered her weapon. "You're right," she said to Huang. "About all of it. I was manipulated, used. Every choice I thought I made was actually scripted by people playing chess with lives." She looked at Jamin. "Including falling for your son." His expression shattered. "But here's what you didn't account for," Naomi continued, her voice strengthening. "I'm not the frightened barista anymore. You wanted to create a weakness? You created something else entirely." She moved, fast, dropping and rolling as she fired upward. Her bullet hit Minho's wrist. He screamed, the gun tumbling from his grip. Jamin moved simultaneously, his shot taking Huang in the shoulder before the man could fire. Mrs. Kang broke free, diving behind the desk as chaos erupted. Security burst through the damaged door. Minho was tackled, disarmed. Huang clutched his bleeding shoulder, laughing even as he was restrained. "It doesn't matter," he gasped. "The prosecutors have everything. The Kang Empire falls regardless." Mrs. Kang's face went white. Jamin holstered his weapon, then turned to his mother. "Good," he said quietly. "Let it fall." "Jamin." "I'm done." He looked at her with something like pity. "You built this prison. You can die in it alone." He took Naomi's hand and walked away. Outside, dawn was breaking over the city. Police sirens converged on the warehouse. Federal agents would arrive within the hour. "They'll arrest everyone," Naomi said, "including you." "I know." Jamin's thumb traced circles on her palm. Chen had a contingency. Immunity deals, witness protection. He planned for this ending. "Did he plan for us?" He stopped, turning to face her fully. "No one could have planned for you." His hand cupped her face. "You were supposed to be a tool, a convenience, but you became everything." Tears burned her eyes. Even knowing it started as a lie? Especially knowing that. His forehead touched hers. "Because you took a lie and made it real. You took the weakness they tried to create and turned it into the only strength that matters." "What's that?" "The choice to love someone despite knowing exactly what it costs." She kissed him then, fierce and desperate, two people clinging to each other as the world they'd known crumbled around them. When they pulled apart, federal vehicles were pulling up. "Ready?" he asked. "For what comes next?" She took his hand. "With you? Always." They walked toward the agents together, leaving behind the shadows and stepping into an uncertain dawn. The empire would fall. Blood would answer for blood, but they would face it side by side. And that, Naomi realized, was the only truth that mattered. 3 months later, the city had moved on. The Kang Empire's collapse made headlines for 2 weeks. Arrests, indictments, frozen assets. Mrs. Po Kang faced federal charges. Uncle Min Ho turned state's witness. Don Huang's syndicate fractured without his leadership, smaller operations scrambling to fill the vacuum. And Jamin Kang became the man who brought down his own family. The immunity deal held. Witness protection was offered. A new identity, a new city, a clean slate far from the blood and betrayal. Naomi stood in the small apartment the federal government had provided, temporary housing, while she decided her future, as the case agent had phrased it. Through the window, she could see the cafe where she used to work, its familiar awning faded and welcoming. Her old manager had called twice, asking if she wanted her job back. She hadn't answered. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She knew who it was before she opened it. Jamin stood in the hallway wearing jeans and a simple jacket, the most ordinary she'd ever seen him look, and somehow it made him more devastating. The tailored suits had been armor. This was just him. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi." An awkward beat, then, "Can I come in?" She stepped aside. He entered slowly, taking in the sparse apartment, so different from the estate, from the luxury she'd briefly inhabited. "They treating you okay?" he asked. "The agents are professional. The therapist is helpful." She managed a small smile. "Apparently, I have PTSD, officially." "Me too." He turned to face her. "They want me to relocate. Phoenix, maybe. Somewhere with sun and no history." Her heart clenched. "Are you going to?" "Depends." "On what?" "On whether you'll come with me." He said it simply, no manipulation, no pressure, just truth. "I know what I'm asking. You could have your life back, the cafe, your friends, normalcy. You could forget." "I don't want to forget." The words came out fiercer than she intended. "Do you know how many nights I've lain awake trying to figure out what was real, what was manipulation, and what was choice?" "Naomi, let me finish." She crossed to him. "I was angry. For weeks, I was so angry I could barely breathe. At your mother for using me. At Huang for targeting me. At you for being the reason I was pulled into hell." His expression was carefully neutral, braced for rejection. "But then I realized something," she continued. The moment everything became real, truly real, wasn't when your mother whispered in my ear. It wasn't even when you kissed me, or when Chen died. When was it? When I chose to stay. After the shooting, after learning the truth, after every chance to walk away, I stayed. Not because I was trapped, because I wanted to. His throat worked. Why? Because somewhere between playing pretend and fighting for our lives, I fell in love with you. She took his hand. The real you. The man who shields people instinctively, who carries guilt like armor, who would destroy his own family to do what's right. I'm not a good man, Naomi. No, she agreed. But you're trying to be, and that's enough for me. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like he was afraid she might disappear. Phoenix is hot, terrible coffee culture. She laughed against his chest. Then we'll open our own cafe. You're serious. Completely. She pulled back to look at him. I'm not the woman who stumbled into your world anymore. I'm not running scared. If I'm with you, it's because I choose to be, every single day. His hand cupped her face. I don't deserve you. Probably not. She smiled. But you're stuck with me anyway. He kissed her then, slow and deep, a promise rather than passion. When they pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers. What do we do now? She whispered. We live. We try to be normal. His lips quirked. We probably fail spectacularly. Sounds perfect. 6 weeks later, they stood in a small Phoenix cafe space with good bones and terrible lighting. The lease was signed under new names, names that meant nothing to anyone, that carried no history of violence or empire. Naomi traced the counter where their espresso machine would go. We'll need to repaint. Everything, Jamin agreed, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. New start. Clean slate. She leaned into him, watching the desert sun stream through dusty windows. Outside, people passed by. Ordinary lives, ordinary problems. The kind of existence she'd once taken for granted. But she'd never be that person again. Neither would he. They'd both seen too much darkness, carried too many scars. Do you think it's really over? She asked quietly. He was silent for a moment. The prosecutors believe Huang's network is dismantled. My mother won't see freedom for 20 years. The immediate threat is gone. That's not what I asked. His arms tightened fractionally. No, I don't think it's over. People like Huang, they're Hydra heads. Cut one down, 2 more appear, and there are others who know what my family was, what I know. So we're looking over our shoulders forever. Maybe. He turned her to face him. But we're doing it together. That has to count for something. She studied his face, the man who'd been a stranger, then a danger, then something infinitely more complex. It counts for everything. Through the window, a car slowed. Black sedan, tinted windows. Naomi tensed instinctively, her hand moving toward where she used to carry her weapon. The car passed, just someone looking for parking. Jamin's hand covered hers. We're okay. She exhaled slowly. For now. For now is enough. They stood in the empty cafe, 2 people who'd survived impossible odds, bound by choices made in fire and blood. The future was uncertain. Danger might find them again. But they'd faced worse. And they'd do it again, side by side, for as long as they had. Because some love stories don't end with happily ever after. They end with a choice. To stay. To fight. To build something real from the ashes of everything that tried to destroy them. Naomi Carter had made her choice, and she'd never been more certain of anything in her life. Thanks so much, my dear friends, for enjoying this beautiful story till this end. If you've not subscribed, kindly subscribe now to be notified when we drop our next story. Also, like the video and comment where you are watching from and what time it's at your end. Thank you.